So, you know what we ought to do later on this year?
What is that?
I think Florida ought to elect a new governor.
Maybe throw in the Senate, too.
Sure, why not? You know? Well, Democrats think they might have a chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans are in the background snickering, going, sure you do, ha, 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 ha. But we don't know. We'll find out in November, but I thought maybe we'd have a little discussion about the governor's race.
And do you want to talk about polls, too, which I know, they'll be doing a lot of polling on it. One of your favorite topics.
Polls? What's that?
Take it away, my
Anybody who pays any attention to any polls, well,
Yes. I think
most of them
anyone
are
who's
wrong.
listened, watched you for the last many decades, knows full well your feeling about polls. Why don't we start with the governor's race? Take it away, sir.
Well, it's been interesting. The leading candidate on the Republican nomination is Congressman Byron Donalds of Naples. He's 47 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's raised more than $67 million. He's so far ahead of everybody else. I mean, some of them have raised less than $1 million. Even on the Democratic side, he's way ahead of the Democratic candidates. He looks very formidable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we watch in the weeks ahead, one of the proofs of how formidable he's going to be, and it's already happening, is his opponents for the nomination are going to be attacking him like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we have the lieutenant governor of the great state of Florida, Jay Collins.
Mm-hmm.
He's 50. The interesting thing about the lieutenant governor,
Former Green Beret.
former Green Beret, and we'll get into some of that stuff, Ron DeSantis, the guy who made him lieutenant governor because he had a vacancy, the office was vacant for 7 months before he got around to appointing Jay Collins, still hasn't endorsed him for governor. Now, in my lifetime, the lieutenant governor has had to become governor twice, which is really the only job the lieutenant governor has. In fact, we ought to have him change our Florida Constitution so that the lieutenant governor is given some kind of job, anything. He can sweep the floors. He can be president of the Senate. He can, whatever, give him a cabinet position, whatever. But the lieutenant governor has no job other than to check the pulse of the governor every day. And twice, when Bob Graham left to go to the Senate, his lieutenant governor, Wayne Mixon, became governor for 3 days.
And then Lawton Childs.
And when Lawton Childs died, his lieutenant governor, Buddy McKay, took his place for the final month of Lawton Childs' term. So that's the job of the lieutenant governor. But there's also supposed to be some friendship and loyalty between the governor and the lieutenant governor.
This is a governor who ticked off one of the most powerful women in politics, Susie Wiles. So who are you talking about here?
So you would think that when Jay Collins said he was going to run for governor,
Great idea, Jay.
suddenly you'd have Ron DeSantis out there cheering him on. He's got my endorse. Not a word. And to say that Jay Collins' campaign is struggling a bit is to put it mildly.
So is Paul Renner's.
And Paul Renner, the former House Speaker, 59 years old, he was House Speaker from 22 to 24. He's from Northeast Florida, and where Jay Collins was an Army vet, Renner is a Navy vet.
Mm-hmm.
And Renner is also running, by comparison to Donalds, a unimpressive campaign. They both now Donalds and Collins and Renner insist that they have a great shot at Donalds.
Yeah.
That people are going to get weary of him.
Where's the money?
Yeah, they're not raising much money. Some people in the background very quietly say that one of the things against Byron Donalds is the fact that he's black.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible thing to say, but there is an element of people out there who will not vote for him because they won't be able to stomach having an African American in Tallahassee as governor. But Byron Donalds also has something else besides $67 million. And people are not sure. It's really hard to say. Today,
Trump's support?
it's a good thing he's got Trump's support.
Yeah.
Now, the other irony there is he, too, doesn't have DeSantis' support. DeSantis hasn't endorsed anybody in the governor's race, which is by itself kind of odd for a guy who loves power and exerting it. But I think he's afraid of annoying Trump any more than he already has. Because the other thing that's part of all this is lingering over the governor's race this year is what's Governor DeSantis going to do when he has to move out of the mansion in January?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something, though, Brian. So you're going down the Republican list. There was an interesting Stetson University poll, and they said Florida Politics does their salt shaker test, they call it. And they said the real story, we've talked about a lot, it's the independent numbers, a large undecided block that neither party has locked up. The bottom line, they did a spring 2026 survey. And at the end of the article, Steve Van Coor put it together, said Florida's Republican-leaning, but not locked down. Independents are available. Women are movable. And for Democrats, and we need to talk a little bit about Jerry Demings and David Jolly leading the charge there, they're going to have to do that through a big women's vote, big independent vote, and said everyone, regardless of party, is worried about the cost of living, the big wild card here. That, they argued, is the map for 2026. Agree?
Yeah, one interesting thing on May 2nd on Fox, Byron Donalds was asked about the economy, and he's got Trump's support, so he's feeling he can't make the president angry, and he says on Fox, by and large, our economy is quite strong. Then he goes, we do understand that there are frustrations around gas prices. When this conflict comes to a close, meaning our war with Iran, those prices are going to drop like a rock. I don't think that was the smartest thing for him to say on May 2nd as people are driving up to get to the pump.
Yeah.
And
we're looking at the cost of a gallon of milk.
And it will be interesting to see whether or not his Republican opponents who don't have Trump's endorsement, but on the other hand, don't want to annoy him either, go after him on that, because most economists are not saying that if the war ended tomorrow, prices would drop like a rock.
Quite to the contrary.
But they're not saying it won't drop, but that it will take time.
Yes.
You got to move everything and blah, blah, blah. But so, for him to say the economy is quite strong at a time when the average Florida voter may not necessarily agree that the economy is quite strong was an interesting thing for him to say. And it may be something that like I said, comes back to haunt him later on in the election.
The bottom line, though, as we sit here today, obviously lots can change, but it's hard to imagine with his war chest, with his support. I think of people like, Toby Overdorf, who's been our guest before, people like that. It's hard to imagine Byron Donalds not being strongly in the driver's seat among Republicans. But then we need to talk about Democrats. Jerry Demings, Orange County mayor, former sheriff, positioning as a moderate. David Jolly, the Republican turned Democrat. And again, going back to this analysis, with dissatisfaction, with the cost of everything through the roof, with generalized, really bad economic anxiety, can you see a world in which they thread the needle there come November? At red state, many say, oh, come on, you political junkies just want to make a story that's not going to be one of Republicans all the way. Not so sure.
Well, it's going to be difficult. I think even the Democrats admit that it's not going to be an easy election for them. David Jolly, who's 53, is running against Jerry Demings, the mayor of Orange County. David Jolly's a former Republican congressman. He says that he left the GOP in 2018, and he says America needs more politicians willing to admit they were wrong and evolve to meet the moment where voters currently are. So a lot of the positions he had when he was a Republican, he has disowned, and says that that more people need to acknowledge when they've made a mistake on an issue and move forward with changes in their thinking. He's not all wrong about that. I think,
Ronald Reagan did it.
Yeah. I mean, he said, he said his priorities would be to fight the affordability crisis and support public health and public education. But all of the candidates, even on the Republican side, are starting to talk more and more about affordability. And in Florida, where affordability isn't just gas prices, before the war in Iran, people for the last few years have been talking about property insurance, affordable housing, and more often than not, that is getting out of reach. Even rental property has become too much for a lot of people, and they wind up living hours away from where they work just so they can find a place cheap enough to live. And that's the kind of issue I think in the governor's race is going to be big.
Bottom line, isn't this really a vote about how you feel about President Trump one way or the other?
I think to some degree it is, sure. I think it's more important for the Republicans, than it is for Democrats, because, Republican farmers are being hit hard by oil prices and the price of everything. Some of their products are not moving like they used to. Trump is every other day he's got a tariff on some.
China's cut off exports to some of our farmers, a lot of our farmers.
I think there's if you're a Republican small business owner, you're feeling the pain of these gas prices going up. So I think I don't think that necessarily these Republicans are going to turn around and vote for a Democrat, but they may stay home. And that costs a Republican votes. And then you have the independents. People forget nearly a third of Florida voters. Now we're talking about the general election. Nearly a third of Florida voters are independents, no party voters. So which way are they going to go in this coming election?
Yep.
Again, a lot's going to depend on what they're paying for groceries and what they're paying for gas. But I wanted to go back to Jay Collins for a minute.
Sure.
I do have in my investigative report here on
well typed.
Why a good reason why. Now everybody knows Ron DeSantis is not the most cuddly kind of guy. He's kind of grumpy, rarely smiles.
Needs to work on this one.
Rarely smiles.
When you see him smile, you know why he rarely
and
smiles.
not somebody who takes any kind of insult easily. You can't apologize to him. He doesn't want to hear it. So in his second week of office, our fearless Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, Florida Politics published leaked text messages between Collins and Representative Alex Andrade, revealing they believe Ron DeSantis has autism and has concealed the disorder from the public. I can guarantee you that the moment Politico published that, Ron DeSantis probably hasn't talked to Jay Collins since. For him to suggest that the governor has autism probably didn't help him with trying to get an endorsement from Ron DeSantis. Although I think a lot of people would have agreed with him.
I'm not touching that with it. Listen, you've said whatever you're going to say in terms of exercise of raw politics, political power, and political smarts, whether you agree with his political smarts. They'll be writing about Ron DeSantis for a long time. In fact, the argument's never been about his policy wonkiness. It's been about his ability to translate that into connecting with people.
He has been the most popular, the most powerful governor maybe in Florida's history.
Ivy League educated, smart guy.
Guy went to Yale and Harvard, even though he thinks they're terrible schools now. He went to Yale and Harvard. And no, I mean, he has single-handedly run this state for nearly 8 years now.
Let's move on to the Senate special election. Ashley Moody, you would think going in, she appointed senator and former attorney general, of course, big Trump supporter. And, again, that's why I said the shadow of Trump will hang over this. You got Ashley Moody, Alex Vindman, a Democrat. Obviously we've got to get through the primary stage. He's a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel. Angie Nixon, progressive, described as a progressive state representative. What's your take on the U.S. Senate race?
Well, the interesting thing about the U.S. Senate race
And of course, we got to get
is
past
that-
August, but
is the August 18th primary. Is one of the interesting things about the U.S. Senate race is generally people don't care. Especially if they get distracted by the governor's race, legislative races. We got congressional races coming up. That they tend to tune in more to those, especially the governor's race, than they do the U.S. Senate race. So it's not the kind of thing where people, why, by golly, I'm going to go vote today because I'm voting for U.S. Senator. They're going to go vote today because they're voting for governor. And of course, we also have the 3 cabinet races as well. And people don't pay much attention to those either. So Ashley Moody was appointed to her position to, I think,
fill out Marco Rubio.
She's very
term when he
loyal.
went
She's
to
very loyal to
Sec
Donald
State.
Trump. I think it's going to be an interesting race because his name went out of my head.
Vindman. Alex Vindman.
Alex Vindman. He's got a national profile because of him and his twin brother and the disputes they had with Trump in the first administration. And he's raised a considerable amount of money for somebody who's relatively new to Florida and would be looked at as a long shot. So I think if we wind up with a lot of angry voters who are voting anti-Trump in these races, it could hurt Ashley Moody. Whether or not it hurts her enough, I just don't know.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, I think it's why many say, listen, it's a red state. You were saying it long before other people were, in a very definitive way. I won't say others weren't saying it, but you've been no, but you have. You've been definitive on that well before a lot were. But we're in a year and a time and moods and pocketbooks. That's a lot of political calculus to figure out and say all the old rules apply. I think it's going to be very interesting what ends up happening. And is it wide open? No. It's a red state.
Here's a potential explosion. There's been reporting that Ron DeSantis is interested in a cabinet position, that he would dearly like to be defense secretary. In his dream world, he wouldn't mind being appointed to the Supreme Court, according to the reporting. Ron has not called me to confirm.
Yes, yeah. Wow. Stunner.
But imagine that all of a sudden, within the next month or so, Pete Hegseth steps down. Trump says, I want to appoint DeSantis. DeSantis resigns from the governor's office with 3 or 4 months still left in his term. Collins becomes governor. He's now the incumbent.
You have a lot of spare time on your
because
hands.
if DeSantis gets offered this defense secretary or secretary of war, he'll take it in a heartbeat. And if he had to resign from office with 3 or 4 months left in he'll go.
Okay.
And all of a sudden you wind up with Jay Collins as governor.
Wow.
What happens to Byron Donalds? Now, I think the odds of that happening are very small.
Really small, you'd say.
Well,
like
because
impossible?
Because there are people within Trump's administration, Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, who DeSantis tried to destroy.
Okay.
She hates him. Her deputy chief of staff hates DeSantis. So I'm sure they would do all they could to block it. But Trump is Trump. And if Trump gets it in his head that he wants DeSantis to be the defense secretary, I'm telling you, Governor Jay Collins.
Love you to pieces. If any of what you just said comes true, I'm buying you lunch for the rest of your life. I mean, a really nice one, too.
And we have this on tape.
And you have it on tape. Boy.
It's not I'm telling you, it's not impossible.
What time of the early morning were you thinking this up? 2 a.m. When you were walking the dog. It's like I'm wondering. That was wow. I've known you a long time, and one of the best.
Imagine a Supreme Court justice retired. Come on. He would take that job. You doubt it?
No, I'm thinking that scenario has about, oh my gosh.
So
it has about as much chance as you watching a full football game.
If Hegseth left in a few weeks.
Okay, good.
Do you think, and he offered it to DeSantis, do you think he'd take it?
No, I'm not entertaining this because it's so out there.
It's not out there.
Back to planet Earth for a moment. I do want to ask in our remaining time, because these are pocketbook issues, and obviously we're going to be looking to talk to all of these people. We've already started inviting them. Let me ask you about two pocketbook issues, Brian. As you say, we do have to pass a budget in the state of Florida. The one job they have, they still haven't done it. What's happening there? And then I want to ask you about property taxes. Where the heck did that debate go? But first to the budget.
Well, I mean, in a way, there's good news behind them being late with the budget. They had the 60-day special session. They couldn't get it done. They didn't even bother bringing it up during the special redistricting session. So from May 12th to May 19th, supposedly they're going to look at it and get it done. Oddly, what I see as good news in it is what stopped it from happening was disagreements between the House and the Senate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, ideally, you wanted them to reach agreement within the realm of the 60-day session. But, we've had too much of whatever the governor wants, we'll do, and we'll just pass it, and we're done, and we're going home.
Like redistricting.
Like redistricting. The legislature is supposed to debate issues, disagree from time to time, and reach compromise. And to pass a budget, there's some significant differences between the House and the Senate. They're going to have to sit down and compromise and on things they strongly disagree about in order to pass a budget, because we have to have a budget by July 1st, the start of the fiscal year. And that's happening. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like when all is said and done, but I actually find some good news in the fact that
some checks and balances.
Checks and balances. By golly, the founding fathers had this idea.
And by the way,
maybe Congress could take a note.
Yeah, in a mega state like this, I thought the 60-day sessions
and property taxes.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, this is another thing. I mean, as strong as Ron DeSantis can be about so many things, and he's been an extremely strong and effective governor in accomplishing what he wants to accomplish, whether you agree with him or disagree with him. He's talked a long time about reducing property taxes, but he has yet to offer up a proposal, which is odd. And the House and the Senate have both kind of batted around a few ideas, but they haven't come up with anything really concrete either. So local governments are terrified.
Yeah. We've had a number of those guests on Top of Mind,
County
Florida.
Government, city governments, they're terrified of that property tax is going to be dramatically reduced, which will...
There go local services.
Cut a, and that's one of those things where, on the surface, people go, well, sure, I'd love to have my property taxes cut. Well, if that road work stops, if that basic services that you get from your city or county,
the park closes,
slow
the
down,
closes,
or they start charging fees for things they never used to charge fees for, you may want to think that over again. But I think they'll do something, but I don't know exactly what it'll be.
Well, to say we have an interesting summer and fall ahead. Of course, it's all going to change after your. I'm framing your 6 ways from Sunday about what's going to happen in the next month.
Defense Secretary Ron DeSantis.
Okay, good. You heard it here first, and hopefully last.
Or Supreme Court Justice, or
sure.
Maybe they'll give him the Commerce Department.
Okay, keep working. Well, just have him do all the cabinet jobs.
I'm just saying, Defense Department was his preference.
Okay.
I think Supreme Court number 1, Defense Department number 2.
Oh, good. We're going to rub
Supreme Court might be a little complicated.
I'm not going to worry about buying you lunch for the rest of my not at this point. That's it for Top of Mind Florida and Out of Mind Florida. No, but I tell you, Brian, interesting times ahead. Again, on a serious note, don't believe in polling. Who knows? I think, listen, it's a year where so much is going on. If you just said January 1st, all the things we'd be dealing with now that might possibly change the dynamic of races, not only in Florida, elsewhere, we wouldn't necessarily have believed it all. So interesting times, but we'll be here to cover it all. Final thought.
Well, if you're watching or listening to Top of Mind Florida, we're going to keep you up to date on what's going on. We're going to get behind the scenes on a lot of it. And you know what? We're going to keep it so that we're not all screaming at each other. We're just talking and have a conversation. So if you're a subscriber to Top of Mind Florida, thank you very much. And if you're not, by golly, subscribe.